how can I think thoughts that feel good when I am in such physical distress? And we said, we know it isn't easy, but still it is your task. But how can I not notice that I am in pain? We know it isn't easy, we said, but it is your task. Somehow you have to separate what is happening right now. I don't have enough money. I can't pay my bills. The bank's going to foreclose on my house. My lover has left me. Someone I adore has made their physical transition. What is what is what is. But you've got to find a way of approaching what is from a different vibrational stance. That is your work. That is what the art of allowing is. It's what the science of deliberate creation is. It's what deliberately creating your own reality is. You see, if you're just looking at what is, then you're offering a vibration of what is. And when you offer a vibration of what is, law of attraction matches your vibration of what is and gives you more of it. And then if you just observe what is, you offer a vibration of what is. And law of attraction matches the vibration of what is and gives you more of what is. And then if you just observe, well, we've been over this, haven't we? In other words, you have to find a way that you are approaching what is through a different vantage point. You have to find a way of approaching what is in a way that will allow you a different vibration, because unless you achieve a different vibration, your point of attraction is not going to change. So we said to our friend who has arthritis in her hips, you have this arthritis in your hips. That's like the action journey. That's where you are. That's what is. You've got arthritis in your hips and it's painful. That's what is. But can you hear us when we say arthritis in your hips and fearful? Or arthritis in your hips and hopeful? Very different vibrational circumstances. And the difference between being fearful and hopeful is the difference between arthritis in your hips getting worse or getting better. When you've been taught that suffering is virtuous, when you've been taught that struggle is required before there can be any active motion forward, then you are not paying attention to your own guidance system, which is always calling you toward the best feeling thought you can find. So how do you know what kind of thoughts your source thinks? Well, through trial and error. You can try it. You can test it. In other words, when you say, I am not a good person, does that make you feel wonderful or awful? And since it makes you feel awful, what does that tell you? You've activated a vibration that's nowhere near the vibrational proximity of your source. Your inner being, that which you call God, does not agree with your statement. When you say, the world is getting worse, does that make you feel happy or awful? And the reason it feels awful is because your source does not agree with that. When you say, I hate you, or I hate me, or I don't like that, or that is wrong. In fact, when you point out anything that you do not want, do you know why it feels so bad to you? Because when you look at something wanted and say yes to it, you include it in your vibration. So when you include something in your vibration that you want, you're in agreement with you, and your vibrational relativity is not compromised. But when you look at something you don't want and you shout no at it, you include it in your vibration. And when you include something in your vibration that's not a vibrational match to who you are, your vibrational relationship is compromised. You can feel that you are introducing vibrations. You are activating vibrations within you that are contrary to who you really are. Isn't it wonderful to know this? When you feel good, you're tuned in, tapped in, turned on, you're lined up with who you are. And when you feel bad or any degree of that, to that degree you are not. So on this emotional scale, up here where joy is, where appreciation and love is, you know what those feelings really are? It's your acknowledgement of your personal empowerment and freedom. And you know down here where fear and victimhood and depression are and all of that stuff that feels so bad, what is that? That's your perception of your lack of power. That's your perception of your loss of freedom, isn't it? When you are afraid, isn't the reason you are afraid is because you feel powerless to be able to achieve something that is important to you to achieve? We promise you that every emotion that feels bad is about your perception of your loss of power. And the better the emotions feel, the more empowered you are feeling. Your lover has left you, that's what is. Being mad as hell that your lover has left you, or being The victim who has no control in your life, very different vibrational place, you see. We would far rather that you be angry than fearful or defeated or victim, because anger is closer to where you want to be than victim and fear. And when you think about that, you know it because you'd rather be angry than fearful. We've written a book, and in it we have listed an emotional scale. And people are pestering Jerry and Esther, wanting them to create the scale on a bookmark or something that they can keep it with them. And we are not encouraging Jerry and Esther to make a big thing of this emotional scale. For heaven's sakes, you can tell how you feel. You can tell that fear feels worse than anger, can't you? Every single time. Would you rather be frustrated or angry? Well, maybe we should not demonstrate. Would you rather feel appreciation or embarrassment? Would you rather feel love or hate? So some of them are more obvious than others. Would you rather feel hope or belief? Would you rather feel belief or knowing? Would you rather feel anger or revenge? You know this vibrational scale. In other words, you can tell which emotion feels better to you, and you know you are the only one who has to conclude, because you are the only one involved in your vibrational relativity. You don't have to ask somebody else what they think, because what they think has nothing to do with your vibrational relativity. And when you care about how you feel and you reach for the best feeling thought you have access to, you're going to begin in that moment to improve your vibrational relativity on every subject that enters your vibrational sphere, which means you're going to begin living happier ever after, and then happier ever after, and then happier ever after, and then happier and happier and happier ever after. When you find the breath of fresh air that revenge will give you over fear or depression, you know the system. Of course, we don't want you to stay stuck in revenge. We don't even want you to stay there long enough that it inspires your action. But we certainly would coach you into revenge or hate or anger if you were in depression, because that is the most logical first step out of your depression that you can make. And even though we want you to get up into bliss and appreciation, we know that if from your depression you make the effort to go all of the way to appreciation, you'll get lost in the crevasse, because the vibrational difference between despair or fear or depression or that feeling of not control of your life and that feeling of appreciation and empowerment, it is a huge vibrational difference. And we have never seen anyone make the jump unless they had just experienced the death experience. In death, that's exactly what you do. You immediately leave behind all fear, all doubt, all pushing against, and you reemerge into the perspective that is really you. But while you are in these physical bodies, it is ever so much more effective and long-lasting for you to move yourself incrementally up the emotional scale on subjects as they come up. When you feel negative emotion, no matter how strong or mild it is, it always means there's some resistance active in your vibration that is preventing you from being a vibrational match to what you're asking for. And you have to clean up that vibration, which means you have to find a frequency that's closer to what you are wanting. So are you understanding vibrational relativity? It makes perfect sense, doesn't it? You would never set your radio dial on 630 and demand to hear what's being broadcast from a different vibrational frequency tower. You know that about frequency matching. And now you know that about your own personal creative experience. We want you to leave this gathering today knowing that your emotions are your guidance, and with a newfound decision within you that you're going to begin to use them. Hear your Magellan saying, please return to the highlighted route, and then laugh and say, but of course. And most important, we really, really, really want you to make peace with where you are. We want you to no longer beat up on yourself for your negative emotion or for your negative experience. Just say, so what? So what? This is where I am, but it's a temporary spot that I am standing in. And haven't you noticed that if you look toward where you want to go and keep moving, that you'll get closer and closer to where you want to go? Jerry's learned that as he watches Esther drive the monster bus. He'll point at something over there. He'll say, look over there. And then he notices she starts to veer over there. He's gotten so he only points at things right down the road. And you all do that. You all things move in the direction that you are looking, you see. So you cannot look at what's wrong in your life or wrong in the world or wrong anywhere without activating that vibration within you. And when you activate the vibration of something that's wrong, then you disallow or resist the vibration of something that's right. You just can't move in two opposite directions. You can't move toward what you want and away from what you want at the same time. In other words, it's one or the other. You're either on your highlighted path or you're not, and your emotions are letting you know when you are. Now, it's not as cut and dried as that. In other words, there are many, many paths, and they are wide and very divergent. In other words, there are lots of different ways to get you to where you want to be. It is our desire that you leave this gathering today with a new decision within you. Two new decisions, but one is really primary, and that is, I really, really want to feel good. And that decision will lead you to another decision that says, I want to be aware of how I feel. And I really, really want to feel good. And then that decision will lead you to another decision. I really, really want to feel good. So it is important to me to be aware of how I feel. And from that awareness of how I am feeling, I'm going to get real with it. I'm going to acknowledge that that is how I feel. I'm not going to sugarcoat it with smiles and cover up words. I'm going to acknowledge where I am on the emotional scale. And then I'm going to reach for the relief that releasing resistance always gives me. In other words, I'm going to reach for the best feeling thought I can find from where I am right now. And when I feel any feeling of relief, I will know that I have left some resistance behind. And that is time for celebration. Anytime you feel a little better, celebrate that you've left a little relief behind. And anytime you feel a little worse, celebrate the fact that you're aware that you're feeling a little worse. In other words, make peace with where you are. Don't be afraid of your thoughts. You never get it done and you can't get it wrong. So if you don't feel good, if life isn't treating you right, if things aren't going the way you want them to, that's all right. Just stop and say, all right, this is where I am. Now, how can I find a better way of looking at this? How can I eke out for myself a little bit of relief right here and now? If we were your academic teacher giving you academic grades for your effort, we would give you an A every time you shift vibration, even if it is in the slightest bit. We would give you an A when you move from fear into revenge. We would. We would give you an A when you move from belief into knowing. We would. We would give you a reward. Well, you get the reward. The reward is the feeling of relief. The reward is, in other words, it is what you are always reaching for. It is the combining of yourself more in this moment with who you really are. You are extensions of source energy. Do you know that? You are extensions of pure positive energy. You are God force in these bodies having this leading edge experience. And you are known by that which is source to be wise enough to conclude what's best for you. Everyone is purposefully, selfishly wired. Because what could be better than all of these trillions of consciousness? We can't even find a number big enough to define the number of consciousnesses that are out here vibrating. Trillions of consciousnesses having vibrational experiences and exposure to contrast, which is giving birth to new desires, which source is saying, yes, we agree, yes, we agree, yes, we agree, yes, we agree. Now all you have to do is come into agreement with what your contrasting experience has caused you to ask for. Do you know that today, you in your generation are experiencing the benefit of what generations before you have launched? Because as they lived contrast, they desired for better times. And many of them died not letting the better time into their experience because they did not know about their vibrational relativity. We have enjoyed this interaction more than words can convey.